contact, this is where just the regular ventilator tubing goes. Okay, so you have a gauge, and then you have your expiratory. Okay, and then you have your patient room. Alright, so that hooks up like that. And then you could put your flow sensor in now, and those are color coded as well, so there's a blue and a clear on those, and there's one that's blue and one that's clear. So you hook that in there. Alright. And then this just goes in line. This says up, so you want your tubes to be up. Right? I'll put the cap back on. So my goal is that you don't have to use a test along. That's my goal, and like I said, I spent hours messing around with this. All right, so then you turn on here. Okay, and it's just gonna come on. All right. So then I start with the flow. And the flow is gonna be here. So there's three things you dial. You dial the flow, the PIP, and the PEEP. And a common mistake is people dial in the PEEP first, and then the PIPs, it doesn't like that, and it'll alarm, and once it starts alarming, it'll default you out. So I wouldn't hit anything with alarms yet. I would put in your settings first. So you have a flow of 8. Then I go to your PIP, and I said good starting place is always set it up on 20/5, and then you can just tweak it from there. Okay? So your PIP is your peak inspiratory pressure is gonna read here. And your PEEP's gonna read here. Okay, so you see the 20, approximately 20, and then I'll go with the PEEP. PEEP is gonna read here. So if it alarms, just hit the silence here. If you hit it twice, you'll get 2 minutes. Okay, 20/5. Then the rest of the stuff is touch screen for you. So if you hit the main screen, so now we're going to touch everything in. So this is actually in CMB mode at the moment, which makes your flow trigger off, and you don't have any pressure support. So you wouldn't need this flow sensor in for this. This is regular old time cycled pressure limited ventilation. Okay, so when we put this in, we want to switch it over. So we're going to turn the, hold on, flow trigger, that's it. I knew one of them worked. So when you hit the flow trigger on, then you can go assist controller SIMV. Okay, so we'll go over to SIMV. All right, so then we can dial in our rate. So these we're going to just touch, and we have our up and down arrows here. Okay, so say we have a term baby, and we need really just a rate of 40. Okay, your inspiratory time, you're going to talk to your practitioner about that. We often use 0.3, 0.35, or 0.4. So this is a little bit low here. So we'll set that. Let's just go with point. Okay. Yes, see this constant alarming. All right, so inspiratory times 0.35. So the flow trigger, that's the sensitivity, right? So that's how sensitive is this with my baby that's taking a breath. And it's also going to pick up sometimes with the way that the aircraft, like motion, a little bit too. So smaller baby, higher number, bigger baby, lower number. So because a bigger baby is going to be able to trigger it easier. Does that make sense? So watch your baby's work of breathing, watch the vital signs, and then you can adjust that a little bit. And
so
then
lower number means it takes more effort to trigger it?
Less effort.
Less effort.
Oh, okay.
So bigger baby, lower number.
It's the same on our vent. It's confusing. You think lower number would be
Bigger
less
baby doesn't need,
sensitive. Lower
he
number's
doesn't
more
need as
sensitive.
much. Wait a minute, I'm saying it wrong, aren't I?
No.
Right.
But it's the same as with our vent though.
Bigger baby,
Bigger number.
Can suck harder.
Okay.
yeah.
That one makes sense to me.
Thank you. Sorry. And so we're just adjusting that a little bit to make sure that the baby's able to trigger the ventilator. Okay. All right, and then the pressure support, I usually set it on like 2/3 of my PIP. right? So if I'm on, or sometimes I'll just set that on 8 or 10. Okay? So this is SMV, so I didn't have to use a test long.
So I noticed
Now it's reading high pressure.
I was gonna say, I noticed your pips are up in the 30s.
Yep, and that's just because I changed it over.
Change it over to SIMV, it's been reading?
Yeah,
Okay. So then,
so I'm just tweaking it
just
a little
tweaking
bit.
that back down to
Mhm.
20?
You see how sensitive it is?
Yeah.
We used to do our alarm settings 10 above and 10 below. Is that what you guys do as well, or do you have different?
So, there's 20 over 5. So, yeah, I mean, that's a good, so one of the things I like about this ventilator is if you, once you get all your settings the way you like them, so we have a rate of 49, time of 0.35, our flow is at 8, pressure support of 10, flow trigger of 5, and we're in SIMV and we're reading about 20 over 5. Once I have all those the way I want them, if I hit auto set twice, now it's going to set my alarms based on my settings. So that's a nice thing. So now, based on the settings we chose, it'll just default the alarms. And then if you have something that keeps alarming,
But default the alarms, like what if,
Yeah.
so if the baby does no longer have 20 over 5 and starts having
So
pressures
here's
of
what the alarm's
23, is it
defaulted
gonna
to.
start alarming?
14 over 26. So they're not 10
So
and
it
10.
does 5 on each side
Yep.
instead of 10.
Yep.
Okay.
Keeps it a little tighter that way. All right. You have to hit that twice in order for it to auto set. And if you hit that before you have everything set in, it could lock you out. It won't. It'll keep alarming, keep alarming. That's the thing that I saw a lot of times is like people would send it to biomed because it wasn't working, but the heat was set higher than the PIP, and the alarms were all kittywampus and out of whack, and then they just can't get it to work. Does that make sense? So if you just every single time do it very systematically the same, then you don't need a test lung. If you just leave this on here, if you turn everything off. It took me a long time to find that out, so I'm definitely sharing that information with you. If you just turn it off now and leave the flow the way it is, and I tried to reset it again after I turned it back on, then for some reason it does not like it. That's where the thought was that we needed a test lung always, was from that. But if you turn everything off and start at 0, do your flow, your PIP, your PEEP, and then your touch screens, and then boom, boom, auto set your alarms. You're good. All right? So, I told you we don't have,
HME in this line.
what's that?
There's no HME in this line?
Yeah, there's one here. I just didn't put it in. Then your blender is over here, right? Okay, so the other thing is, I told you we don't have the prongs to do regulated controlled CPAP yet, but I'm working on getting that. The prongs you've seen in the nursery, the Hudson prongs, the bar. So I'm working on getting that, but until we have that, we have high flow cannula that we're using. Let me turn it off. We have high flow cannula that we're using, or we can use CPAP with the ventilator with, it's really essentially a high flow, but it's this RAM cannula, and they're in the bags as well. And this is what they look like. Okay, and there's different sizes of cannulas for those babies. But the idea here is you're giving regulated controlled CPAP, but you're not, it's not occluding the airway. You don't want this to, it's not designed for that. It's not like approved for CPAP, so it's essentially high flow, but you're giving them CPAP at least through the ventilator, so you know that it's regulated. Does that make sense? And then this is really easy.
So if we put that on there, we're not gonna use the CPAP mode on there?
We
or
are.
We are.
Yeah. This is really easy, just goes on here.
Oh.
So this is why I have this in the interim until, because with the Hudson prongs, you have to take this all apart and then put a hat on with safety pins, and it's a little more labor intensive. So I'm working on that, and when I get that all set up, I'll come and show you guys that as well, or have you come or make a video or do something for that. And so then the only difference when you turn it on, and the thing about this is, again, we want all these off. Let me try this if I leave the flow on. If I turn all these off, except I'm gonna leave the flow on and see if it makes a difference. Sometimes it'll come back. Oh, it doesn't look like it's gonna come back. Same settings. So do you see this CPAP manual over here? What I did find with playing this though is if you don't set a PEEP, it won't allow you to go PIP. So if your PEEP is on PIP is on 0, won't let you dial in a PEEP. So I just turn this up, okay? And then I told people just to turn it to like noon or whatever, just so that there's something in there, and then it'll let you dial in the PEEP. Except I don't have a closed system here.
And Stacey, it saves whatever the last settings were.
Yep. It does. So, once I have this, so I'm gonna set my, actually let's go to CPAP mode here. I wonder why I did that. So with the CPAP mode, the constant flow goes on, so then that takes away that flow trigger, and it takes away the pressure support as well. So then I'm just going to dial in a PEEP. Let's say we're going to do a 7. Okay? And then once you have that dialed in, then you just change this to here. You have flow going through here, and then you just blend it. All right? So that's the CPAP. And these are in the bags.
So that'll measure.
Yeah, so it's at least regulated and controlled, but it's still essentially like a high flow, so it's not quite as good, but it's a little step up from the regular high flow cannula. So
What's
babies less than 32 weeks, I would go this route.
You'd go this route
Versus
versus
high flow.
Just it's a little wider. It's going to be.
Is there a way to make that heated, humidified type deal, or
No.
it's just gonna be dry? And
You could put an HME in between that, I believe. I'm going to try that. Yeah. So, advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage, no heat and humidity. Advantages, regulated, controlled at least. But it's still high flow, so it's not a sealed system like the Hudson's. So within the next month, I'm hoping to get the Hudson's going.
Is a really foolish question.
No, no
The
worries.
flow. You said the flow at
I
8.
just set the flow at 8.
What is
It's
the
kind of an
flow?
arbitrary number. It's just driving the ventilator. It won't run without flow. It's all flow driven.
Okay.
So it's just the
It's
amount
just
of flow.
In terms of how fast.
It's like the flow on the flow meter on your
Okay.
wall. That's it. Yeah, just how much is going through the ventilator. So sometimes the good question, if you have a really like 4.5, 5 kilo baby,
If you want a faster
But-
breath, you would turn up the flow so you
you
get a
could, or you
faster-
just give it more support, more power behind the
Yeah.
ventilator. Sometimes you like max out on your settings. Then think about going up on your flow. As opposed to the old ventilator, you have to dial in, the MVP 10. If any of you use that one, you have to dial in the flow, the oxygen and the air flow meters together, and then you would titrate them to get your oxygen concentration. And so you have to. That's how your flow would be driven on those. So this is just one. It's
Okay.
just running the ventilator is all it's doing.
So in
That's a
general,
good
it's
question.
usually.
I usually
8.
set it on 8. Yeah, I don't know why. I like that
Okay.
number. I don't know why.
That doesn't matter.
I feel like
kilos
because
or
it's what you use for, like, to hook up your bag and mask from a wall, like 8 usually is where it'll drive your flow enough to provide, If you say you're running out of air and oxygen and you're like, oh, we're not going to make it, you could go down to 6 even. I've seen some of them. It doesn't affect your settings unless